So how you doing? How you doing? How you doing, man?
I'm drinking, so I'm good.
I hear you. I had to give up drinking, man, because it's giving me headaches. I can't have my beers no more.
Well, I'm drinking wine. I ain't drinking beers. I gave up
So,
beer decades ago. That's just liquid fat, man.
liquid fat.
It's just, all that is. You ain't never heard of a wine belly, have you? But you have
I'm,
heard of a beer belly. All them carbs, man. Carbs ain't no good for you, man.
that's true. You're right. You're right. So what you drinking tonight?
It is a Merceau, a white Burgundy, a
Nice.
white wine from the Burgundy region.
Very nice. Very nice. I used to enjoy fine wine myself back in the day.
Me too. Uh, Ripple, MD 2020,
MD 2020. That'll do it.
fine 1974 vintage.
Dang, man. Well,
That's
everybody,
for the
we're
old.
here.
That's for old people anyway. Young people go, "What the hell are they talking about?"
Right, right. All right, everybody. We're obviously here with Branford Marsalis. This is Marshall Mack coming at you. I'm really happy to have him here. He's not only one of the greatest musicians I know, but one of the nicest people that I've met on my journey, also. So,
Don't tell them.
don't let him know though. It'll ruin your
Mm-mm.
whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you happen to watch Black Godfather, Clarence Avant?
Loved it.
That
Loved
was
it.
that was deep, wasn't it?
You talking about the movie in the '70s, or you talking about the series?
This the series on Netflix about
Yeah,
Clarence.
man. Well, it wasn't Netflix for you, but it was what was it for us? Epics.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
the
an
one with the one with Forrest Whitaker.
No, this was the one where they did a biography. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the movie, but now they did something else on Clarence Avant. You know, Clarence who was in the
I remember Clarence. Yeah.
yeah, it's on Netflix. It's about
I
his
didn't see
life.
that.
Oh
Okay.
man, it is
Did you like
deep.
it?
It's heavy, man. I didn't even know much about Clarence Avant. You know, he's friends with Quincy. He's deep in the music industry. He did so many things as an African American. It's just
Mm-hmm.
stunning. But he had one of his lines I really like. He said life is all about a number. What's love got to do with it?
Right.
he was he was talking about him trying to impress the woman he wanted to marry with how much money he was making.
Of course. I know. I remember Clarence.
Did you ever
Oh
meet
yeah, I
him?
remember. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We didn't. It's not like we fought. It was just like he was talking about what was important to him, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, man. Yeah, that's it's not very important to me.
Right, right.
And it's just interesting when you meet. It's interesting when you meet people who just believe like everybody has a price, and it's like, well, what happens if you don't have a price? Then it's like,
Right.
man, you crazy. I don't understand you. Everybody's got a price. Then there are idiots like me. Okay, I'll live.
You doing all right. You doing all right. So man, just so everyone knows, we go back. I think it was to Westchester when I first met you. I was teaching with Janess Kano with the music school, and
I thought I met you before that, actually, but yeah.
I can't
My
remember it
son was
just
taking piano lessons at Jeunesse Kano in New Rochelle, New York. Oh,
right.
no, in Scarsdale. No, no, Eastchester.
It
East,
wasn't East Chester, right at the border of
yeah,
Scarsdale,
Eastchester, New York.
right? And
Yes,
and your brother's son was taking clarinet with me.
yes. Oh, that's wow. Yeah, Simeon.
That's right. They
Yeah,
all must be grown up now,
they are, well, chronologically, they're all grown up.
right?
Emotionally, they're millennials. So, you know.
Right, right. What do you think is different about the generation today? 'Cause I've been talking about that with folks.
uh, my dad had 6 kids, my parents, and my dad was a school teacher, and he was the breadwinner of the family, and he made $32,000 a year. If I wanted to go to a concert, if I wanted whatever, reads or gas for the car, I had to get a job. My kids and Winton's kids, we make slightly more than $32,000 a year. So if they want something, they just ask for it. And sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. Most times they get it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Hmm.
That's the huge, significant difference.
Right.
Is that they live a level of comfort that we would never have understood as kids.
Hmm.
So there's not a kind of pressure to succeed because in their minds they go, well, if it doesn't work, I can always come back home. And that's where they're wrong. But they don't know that they're wrong till they try to come back home. And it's like, nah, bro, that ain't happening.
Right.
Are you crazy? What do you mean? All my friends. I said, yeah, I don't, they're not here either. Yeah, that's not what it is.
Right.
And so when my dad said to me when we were arguing about something insignificant and stupid because I was a teenager, he said, well, it doesn't really matter to me because, by the time you're 19, you're going to be out of this house. So if you think this is the best way to succeed with that, just do that.
Huh.
So by the time I'm 17, I'm like, shit, I got to leave. My whole mindset is different.
Right.
It's not like I might go to college, I might not. Well, I might get a job at Starbucks. It was like, I got to leave the house.
Right.
There's like, there's at that time, yeah, well, there's 6 kids living in a 3-bedroom house.
Huh.
It ain't working. Parents have one of the bedrooms. 6 kids, 2 bedrooms. The math don't work. Gotta go.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that are just different. There's just a lot of things that are different.
So we didn't have the internet and iPhones and social media and all that. I can't imagine raising children right now like with all that.
Well, even if we had those, we wouldn't have had them. Even if that shit was around,
That's
we
right.
would not have had those things because my father made $32,000 a year.
Right.
I mean, just the food alone for 6 boys.
Right.
That's a lot of money. And instruments and lessons. And it was just, it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
It wasn't going to happen. And I mean, there are kids like that right now. I mean, this is one of the things that the pandemic has highlighted in the United States. They say, oh, we're going to have a pandemic and everybody's going to stay home. So you just have to use your tablets. Well, what about the kids that don't have tablets? We will provide you with significantly more inferior tablets than the people who can afford tablets have. And the internet connection will be spotty and the apps won't work, but we'll provide you with something. So there are kids right now who, they might have an iPhone, but they don't have an iPhone and a computer and the this and the that.
Huh.
They're around, and some of them are mighty, mighty ambitious because they want these things. And they know if they're going to get these things, they have to get them themselves.
Right.
Makes a difference.
Those are all good points. I have to admit, I grew up kind of spoiled. My dad, after the war, went to got on a GI Bill, became one of the first black oral surgeons in America in the late 50s. So when
there you go.
When he went to apply to school, my mother had a master's degree in sociology. When he went to apply to school, he got into the school because he worked at a jewelry store. He was always a hard working man. The
Right.
war really beat up his mind, But when he went to the school in person, he got into the school when they saw him in person. And I hope I can say this on the internet, but what the hell? They said to him, they said, what's a nigger want to be a dentist for?
Yeah.
And they kicked him out, right?
Right.
So people in Pittsburgh he knew had to fight for him to get back into school. And he got back into school, but then they started blocking him. So, and by the way, the first man was a Jewish man who owned a jewelry store who gave him the recommendation. Another man in the school saw they were blocking him and not helping him with the correct courses information. Happened to be another Jewish man in Pittsburgh, because in Pittsburgh there was a big Jewish population.
Right.
He helped him get all the right courses. Later, my father ended up teaching at University of Pittsburgh. This man's son went to University of Pittsburgh and studied with my father, lived in Westchester County, and I met him later in life.
In that
So,
small world, it's great.
but
It's a great
I,
story.
so that one of the things that happened though, I didn't take advantage of the things that I had. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was very isolated. I didn't know, and my elders were already gone. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't understand actually how easy I had it. My dad used to
Right.
try to tell me because he was a hard ass, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
But
No, you never. I mean, it's like this thing. A parallel story is, Winton was always real feisty,
hmm
and I mean, always trying to hang out with the tough guys and the whole thing. And you want to get in a fight with him, just call him a mama's boy. You know, that's like fighting words. And, and then he moved to New York, and then he gets this apartment, and then he's in this apartment, and there's nothing in the apartment. He doesn't know what he needs. He doesn't know what to buy or where to buy it. He can't cook. And he calls me, goes, "Damn, bro, I didn't realize until this moment I'm a mama's boy. I can't do shit." It was like, so you can put up that front, when you in at home and mama's cooking and mama's buying you clothes. So you get to this one moment and you're like, huh, I didn't take advantage of the opportunities I had. And
right.
you just deal with it from there. But it was like a really thing because I was going to school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at the time, and went and called me and said, "Man, I'm a mama's boy. I don't know how to do nothing." I just laughed. Said, "You figure it out."
So what year was that? Was that 76, 75? What was it?
No, we ain't that old. Damn. That was 1979.
So you and I are about the same age.
I'm 60.
I'm 61. All right.
There you go. Oh, sensei. I must respect my elders.
Never go to
Old ass man.
Go school. Yeah, I remember hearing about you through cast Tony Campbell in Pittsburgh and so
My boy, man.
right.
I saw Tony now. Well, last year. It was last year now. Was it last year or was it 2 years ago? This is 2020. Last year, yeah. When they were filming that Ma Rainey's Black Bottom movie in Pittsburgh.
Huh. Huh.
I was a consultant on the film, helping the musicians look like musicians. So
Mm-hmm.
when I got there, first thing I did was call Tony.
Huh.
And went to a couple of jam sessions and we hung out. Tony was my boy, man.
Huh.
Tony, clearly Jeff Tane Watts,
Right.
and this crazy dude, John Smith, and another guy named Don Alico. And they were all from the Berg.
Yeah, I know Don Alico. I remember Watts was in town. Dwayne
Mm-hmm.
Dolphin. Dwayne Dolphin.
Dwayne Dolphin. Played with Winton's band for a little while.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, Tony's a great player, man.
Yep. Tony's my boy.
That's cool, man. It's a small world, right?
It is.
So you were in Berkeley when Lance was in Berkeley, and it was Cleve Guyton, all those guys there. What was going on?
Lance Martin, Cleve Guyton,
Lance Bryant.
Lance Bryant. Oh, I thought we were talking about Pittsburgh in the area. Yeah, Lance Bryant. Yeah, we all got there at the same time. Lance is from, I can't remember the town in Illinois. Maybe he's from Waukegan, which is the same town that Smitty's from.
Hmm.
But yeah, Lance, Smitty Smith, Tane, eventually Wallace Roney, Walter Beasley, Kevin Eubanks. Who am I forgetting? Alex Bugnon, Victor Bailey, Donald Harrison. It was a hell of a class. We had a good time. Tim Williams,
Bone.
Bone.
Man, Bone got some teeth trouble later in life, man. And
I know.
really
I know. I think he fixed it though. I think it's cool now.
It's cool. I saw him recently at the Showman's.
Mm-hmm.
He lost a lot of time in his life. He felt, you know what I mean. So,
Right.
but what can you do? I remember Tony Campbell brought me a tape of this guy. Said this guy's at Berkeley. His name is Donald Harrison. I want you to listen to this.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Donald was a samurai. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was a killer. He still is, but I mean, yeah, he was ready to. He was ready to take you down. Always ready. Always ready to take you down.
He's a really nice cat, but I remember listening to the play and I was like, damn, so this is what the level's going to.
Always ready to take you down, man.
Man, he did that to me once too, because I've always been trying to catch up with you cats in my life, man. So we were in Paris, and maybe it was Paquito de Rivera's band or something. There was a jam session at the hotel, as they do at the Nice Festival all the time back in the day.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I'm
At
playing, and I'm playing too
what
long a
was the name of
solo.
that hotel?
Yeah, you're right. You know the one.
Well, it was a High Regency at first.
I think it was.
It was a High Regency, and then they sold it and it changed. I don't remember the name of it after that, but maybe it was just called the Regency.
So, first we're doing a jam session, and Donald Harrison gets up too, and he's playing. Now he's just playing some bebop, right? I don't know why. He's
Mm-hmm.
just playing some bebop, taking it easy, taking it light. Herbie Hancock comes in and says, "Let me sit at the piano." Everything changed suddenly.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Donald,
Then he pulled out his samurai sword and commenced slicing all of you. Yeah,
you dig? He took everything I played and erased it. He's like,
yeah,
and then he
yeah.
looked at me too,
Yeah, that's Donald. That's him.
So
That's
later,
him.
I saw him in New York one day and I said, "Hey, Don, man, remember we were up in Paris at the hotel?" I said, "Oh, that was you." But I love Donald, man. He's a beautiful cat, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So, man, what I wanted before we go on with so many anecdotes, I've always just wanted. You and I have talked about how you practice in the past. I know a lot of people are interested in that. Um, I find if I listen to one track of a player, I can kind of really start to get into their head. And it's funny, I saw Eddie Daniels say that in the video too. So the track that fascinated me with you was Yes or No off of
Mm,
Random Abstract. I
right.
spent a lot of time picking off stuff from that and listening to what you were doing. The first thing that struck me was the accuracy of your time. You and I talked about time in emails, but what do you do? What did you do to practice time?
I played in an R&B band for
Hmm,
5 years.
that will do it.
Yeah, that's what did it. Because I mean, yeah, just I always I know where the beat is. I know where it is, and because the if you listen to jazz in the 20s, uh, the beat is implied. Uh, and then in the 30s and 40s, it becomes in the 30s, late 20s, 30s, it becomes explicit, and then late 40s, it becomes implicit again. Because in the 20s, the technology didn't allow for drum sets. The set would overwhelm a recording space or a room. So as recording techniques got better and as musicians got better, uh, the big band took over and you could tell where the beat is. That's the beat. It's right there. It was the same beat in the 20s, except in the 20s, the beat was supplied by the piano player and the guitar
Huh.
because the piano players played stride. So it's dum tink dum tink dum tink dum tink dum tink dum tink. The guitar players tink 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 tink. Tuba 1 and 3. Boom 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 boom. But there's no drums other than a hi hat going psh, or maybe a bass drum.
Right.
Occasionally a snare drum. And then by the time the 30s came around, all the drummers were going boom 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 with brushes, not with sticks. Everything was brushes till the late 30s because again the recording equipment, they didn't have limiters, they didn't have you know analog tape just yet, and with natural compression, so drums would overwhelm the room. So when you listen to those Ellington records and some of the Dorsey records, It's just brushes. Everything is brushes, you know. And then like Woody Herman when he did Sing Sing Sing, then you had Gene playing ba-doom, doom, 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 which is something that you could hear not Sid Catlett. I never come on. Okay, this New Orleans guy, he used to do that a lot too.
Uh-huh.
But then when bebop came around, suddenly the pulse was still that, but then it became more implicit because the drummers were playing the bass drum, but it was softer and it was aligned with the acoustic bass, which had taken over for the tuba.
Huh.
And instead of the pulse being on 1 and 3, it was on all 4 beats. So when you hear that big pulse, that big pulse, it's like the old dance beat, the old Pentecostal beat. It's the same beat. It's the Pentecostal church,
Huh.
but it's but you hear that thing and it's ding 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 ding. So the drum set becomes more fluid than static. And then by the 50s, the drum set had become static again, where everything was on the backbeat.
Huh.
And then everything went that way. But when just growing up playing with the static beat, and then about 19 or 20 deciding to play jazz and then switching to the fluid beat, I still knew that the beat was all fours, even though I wouldn't have been able to at the age of 20 or 25 articulate it the way I can articulate it now. I just always knew where the beat was.
Right.
So that's why the time I'm not listening to the drummer for the time. I'm listening mostly to the bass player for the time because the bass is the most consistent thing. I mean, the fact that the bass player is walking 4 should free up the drummer to play more creative ideas than they could have played in prior eras.
Right.
So you need a bass player that has a really strong pulse. And some of the modern bass players that are thinking more like guitar players or trying to play like saxophone players, they want to set up their bass so when it's their turn to solo, they can have more fluidity.
Huh.
They tend to play with a weaker pulse. But I didn't. I surrounded myself with bass players that had a strong pulse, so it wasn't a problem.
Wow. That all makes sense. And I enjoyed listening to your explanation of that, to tell you the truth. That makes sense. A
I'm
lot
glad
of
you asked me at 60 because if you had asked me at 35, I would have said, "Well, said, well, man, we just on the vibe, man. We just, we just on the vibe. We just trying to do our thing." I mean, I wouldn't have been able to articulate that shit at all. So
once you, once you, I had a few topics I wanted to talk to you about, man. It always interests me. But once you sent me a guitar player, I asked you about time years ago in an email, and you sent me a guitar player package. And now I got so much stuff on hard drives now, I can't even remember where I put it. But what was the name of the cat again?
I don't know which cat.
See that?
What kind of music was it?
Oh, it was old blues stuff.
Oh, it was either Son House or Blind Willie Johnson.
That's it. That's it.
Blind Willie Johnson. Pentecostal guitar player, Pentecostal church guitar player.
All right. I gotta find those files and go back over that. So a lot of times, what happens to players like myself who play, say, like in the basic band for almost 20 years, all these big bands, you know, if you're not really blowing and doing stuff, section playing is a whole other art form, as you know.
Absolutely.
And a lot of cats, the young people can't seem to play in the section, man. They don't know how
Nah.
to blend, how to make a section sound. There's a whole secret to getting the basic sax section to sound like it does. You know what I'm saying? And but at any rate, big bands are a different thing. So as I started to get older, that's why I was asking you those questions. A lot of the stuff
Right.
that I missed when I was young. I wanted to touch on a couple things that I really enjoy, and like you, I like pop music. I like funk. I listen to all sorts of stuff. It's hard to
Right.
find something I'll say like I don't like that. You know what I'm saying? I just
Right.
enjoy it. If it makes me have some joy, I'm with it.
Right.
I really love Sting, and I really loved your playing with Sting. My wife loves Sting. She went to see Sting. She got a big thing. I wanted to just ask you, what was it like to play with Sting, brother?
It was great. I mean, he's a really it. I think it's really rare. to find people who are at the pinnacle of that, at the pinnacle of pop culture, who are very at ease with themselves and very sure of themselves. I think a lot of those guys and gals are massively insecure for whatever reason and overly sensitive. And he was just cool, man. I mean, he hired us, first of all. I mean, most guys wouldn't even be able to stand being around a band like that. And we would make suggestions and he would roll with it. And he would say yes or he would say no. But his no wasn't a defense mechanism for him to give the impression that he was always in charge. You know, he was just he was great. And he was gracious and magnanimous. He wrote killer songs. He was just a really secure dude, man. And it was a lot of fun to be around him.
I'm glad to hear that he really presents that, and I really enjoy his music, man. And
Yeah, there was a lot of there was at that time there were a lot of like there was a lot of pop culture envy towards him.
uh-huh.
You know, a lot of vitriol. Like he would he would write in his lyrics about reading Nabokov, and then people would get pissed off and say, "Oh, he's a fucking snob." You know, he has to tell the world he reads Nabokov. It's like if you read Nabokov, you wouldn't be pissed off about that. It's just like this thing when you think about it. You'd be like, "Oh, he reads Nabokov too. Great." Instead, it's like, oh, you know. And then I remember some guy in a band said, you know, what I read too. Sting's not the only person who reads, and it was a completely unsolicited comment. The person asked him a question. It's like, so what are you reading now? And he goes, hey, I read, you know, you know. It just Sting's not the only person who reads. We just don't talk about it and put it in our lyrics. And I'm like, okay, he doesn't read. Because if the motherfucker read, he would just tell you what he was reading. It was just like, I'm reading this. I'm reading cartoon. I'm reading comics. It wouldn't have mattered. It was just one of them funny things. And it was great for me because I was on the outside of it.
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, it's Sting's world. I'm not in his world. Uh, I'm kind of like I'm working, but I'm outside of his world. So everything that I saw it as an outsider. So when I would see events like that, I mean, it didn't affect me one way or the other, but I would read things and hear musicians talk, and I would notice, and I would just file it away. And I said, "What was that about?" Oh yeah, envy. Okay, great. And it helped me later on to deal with other people and personalities and musicians and things like that.
You know, a lot of rock artists, Ian Fleming, and a lot of rock and roll bands have references to all sorts of different novels and Shakespeare and all sorts of stuff in their lyrics, man. It was really common back through the 60s and the 70s for for rock music to have these, especially the English and the American ones. So
It was a different time because I mean they were influenced by other forms of music. I mean, you know, Ginger Baker was checking out Elvin Jones and the drummer with the Doors, whose name I never remember, he was checking out Elvin and
huh.
jazz guys. You know, Miles was hanging out at pop concerts. It was a different. It's so fragmented now.
Right.
It's like everybody is in their own little world, and you know, it's just very, very different. Like
I,
you know,
I agree with that.
there's not many guys like Sting around. You know,
But to me, it affects the jazz players playing because for me, jazz, the essence of the solos I love or the playing I love is someone that sounds like they're singing or expressing or singing a
right,
phrase or singing a melody or knows the words or has a message to send. And I
right.
hear you and I exchanged emails about once, which I discussed the great technique of so many of these players that come out of college, but there's nothing moving to me. And I think they should call it a different music. It doesn't sound like jazz to me. It sounds like something
Well,
else.
I don't call it jazz. I call it improv because that's what they study. They don't study jazz. They study improv. They study improvisational techniques,
Hmm.
and they don't know a whole lot of jazz. You know, but they know a lot of structure. They can kill some structure.
I see.
But if you wanted them to play something like Straighten Up and Fly Right, or you know, Taint What You Do, but the way hot you do it, or something, it just they would struggle with that in a mellow tone. Struggle because that's not what they studied. It's not what they like. It's not. They don't like it. They like, you know, negotiation of chord structure through, uh, you know, a scalic or arpeggiated harmonic approach.
Hmm.
That's the thing that they're actually into. And that's what the difference is. I mean, the more natural musicians play popular music now, uh, profit margin is incredible if you can get with the right person and hit the right thing. I meet a lot of musicians who would have become jazz musicians were there no pop music or country music.
Hmm.
And it's clear why they go in the direction that they go in. And most of them do very, very well. And a lot of the people who play jazz now are more technocratic in their thinking
Right.
than musical. And it's not fair to blame schools. It's just how the dudes are. You know, that's just how they are. I mean, it started hell as soon as Charlie Parker died. I mean, there were people who were in the Charlie Parker. I mean, my dad was one of those guys. You know, he was into the thing he loved the most about jazz was the complication. And then as he aged, he started to appreciate it on a larger, on a grander scale.
Hmm.
I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't like jazz at all. And I think one of the reasons I didn't like it is because all of the musicians were impressed with complication, and I was an R&B sax player. And I'm like, do I really want to sit around and practice for 2 months to learn how to play giant steps, or 6 months to impress like, you know, 20 musicians
Right.
nodding their head in approval in a room? Like that's the end goal? Because I already know there's not a human being in the world that's not a musician who really wants to hear this shit. You're like, no regular person wants to hear a countdown.
You're right.
I know I'm right about that. I mean, I was a regular person. And my dad would play and say, "What do you think?" I'm like, "Man, can we turn this shit off, please?" I was a regular person.
Right.
And then the music took this weird turn where like Charlie Parker did all these things great. Number one, often the most underrated part was he was a swing music big band saxophone player. He knew how to play in the sax section. He was the sax leader. So when he played, everything he played had this dance bounce when he played.
You dig?
And then you have all these guys that were into all of the complicated shit he did. So it was always like Coco, Cherokee, the break tonight in Tunisia, fast, 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 fast. So they're playing all of this stuff and they're learning how to play all this stuff, but they don't have that bounce when they play.
Hmm.
So when regular people would hear Bird, they say, "Man, I just like the way it sounds." They didn't know what it was, but they loved the way it sounded. And then you had a bunch of other people playing, and they say, "Well, I don't know what it is, and I don't like the way it sounds." And that pretty much became what modern. That's what modern jazz became,
Yeah.
where suddenly, you know, if it wasn't the thing you were doing, then all of the shit that preceded it was corny
Hmm.
or outdated. And like there's this old joke that Eric Reeves told me. Uh, a little boy goes to his dad and says, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a jazz musician." And the dad says, "Son, you can't do both." And see, the point is that Charlie Parker could do both. He could play all this unbelievably complicated shit, but he could do it with a high level of charisma and melodicism.
Right.
And that was replaced by high levels of function.
Function.
And I won't say that it was at the expense of melodicism because a lot of those guys did not know how to play melodically.
Huh.
It wasn't a rejection of melodicism, it was an inability to play in a melodic fashion. And they would just double down on their strengths and play more fast tunes and more fast tunes and more complicated tunes and learn simple songs in ridiculously complicated keys. And because I had that whole R&B background and I moved to New York and I would hear guys say, "Well, man, can you play this in F sharp?" I'm like, "Why would I want to play that shit in F sharp?" "Well, man, It's like one of the things you need to do as a musician. I said, man, I played in an R&B band for 5 years with a singer who could only sing in E and G. And in 5 years, no one ever came to me and said, man, you guys need to play in a different key. Never happened. So what happened in New York when I got there, I realized is that musicians were making rules for musicians at the expense of audiences, because audiences don't care about any of that. What audiences really want are songs with really catchy melodies and a good beat and incredibly short solos. That's what audiences want. Now,
You
if
are
the song has a good beat and is catchy, they'll tolerate long solos. But we created this alternate universe and decided that it was the actual universe by saying, well, people really want long ass solos. And if they don't, then they're not hip anyway. And that right there is why the majority of the jazz clubs are empty most of the time.
or there's just musicians in there.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing as being empty.
And I always look to my wife to see what she enjoys. My brother told me a story. My brother was a classical child protege on the trumpet at we had a lot of firsts, and when you and I came up for black people. So back in Pittsburgh, there's a Carnegie Mellon honors band. You know Carnegie Mellon, right?
Yep.
At 14 years old, my brother became first chair in the Carnegie Mellon honors band. I tried out on clarinet several years. I never got it later, but I got a picture of him playing. Janice Wilkins, I think, was also there. She's a black female trombone player. He had told me once when I was young, when I was starting to get into all this technical stuff. He said, Marshall, a man works hard all week at a job he doesn't like and goes home
Damn.
to a family that has trouble and a wife that's nagging him to do stuff. And he's only making enough money to go out maybe on Friday night with his wife. He doesn't want to hear you playing a bunch of complicated stuff and long solos. He needs some joy, and then he wants to go home and make love to his wife, and you ruined his evening.
There it is. There it is. So what we figured out is, you know, unlike the little boy, we can do both. So we play complicated stuff, and then we play this song. And I mean, I have a whole shtick that I do, because we'll play a song like, on the last record, Eric Reeves, who our bassist, who when he's not playing with us, his music leans more to avant-garde. So he wrote this song called Dance of the Evil Toys, and we really go out there. And the audience is like, some people are like, man, that was just like a punch in the mouth. That was great. And other people are like, what the hell was that? I said, well, uh, whether you liked it or whether you didn't like it, I assure you, you won't hear another song like that tonight. And then they'll laugh. And then we'll play a completely different feeling.
Right.
And it might be something they like. Did you like that? Great, because you're not going to hear another song like that tonight either. And it's the theme is that if we're going to play 7 songs, you're going to be in 7 different universes or 7 different countries or 7 different states or whatever it is. We're not going to treat each song like it's a vehicle for my personal improvisation. We're going to play songs that have certain kind of emotional character, and we're going to change the emotion from song to song.
Was
So,
that the same band that you had in South Africa when we ran
yeah,
into each other with Abdullah?
yeah.
I thought so. Joey Calderazzo?
Joey Calderazzo, Justin Faulkner, and Eric Reeves.
That was
And,
killing.
and we were playing jazz, and the audience, being South African, they don't listen to jazz. They were like, man, this shit sucks. And you could feel the energy in the room. They were like, oh, this is. So then we played Sunny Side of the Street, and they just went crazy. Simple song, beautiful melody, repetitive rhythm.
Right.
Got them.
Right.
Got them. If we played nothing else the entire night that they liked, they got that one song.
Right.
And then they'll come up and say, man, I sure did. Yeah, y'all were okay, man, but I really did like that 4th song. Good. 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 I get it.
Yeah, that's funny because I was sitting beside Jackie Kelso. Do you know who Jackie Kelso is?
Yes.
Great Jackie Kelso. He's passed away a few years ago. But when I first got full time in the basic band, he was playing lead alto. He became one of my mentors. He said what you said one day because all the cats are backstage practicing Chi-Chi or something on all 12 keys or something. So I told Jackie I was going to learn Donna Lee and some other key, and he looked at me and said, Well, you can waste your time doing that if you wish, but I'm going to go practice something where I can make some money playing music. And he walked away.
Well, there you go.
Later, he told me, he said, Marshall, not all keys on the saxophone are created equal simply because of the physical mechanical aspect of the instrument.
It's true. I mean, it's just a waste of time.
That's
It's
basically
just a
what he
it's just a waste of time. It's like the idea is I'm going to spend my time doing something that's going to impress 1% of the population.
right.
Is that really that important?
Right.
Is that really that important? Well, I want the cats to be impressed.
Right.
Man,
So
I don't hate the cats. I love the cats, but I'm not going to spend 2 months of my life trying to impress them when I could go out here and play for people.
that's true. But you have amassed an amazing technique, and I remember once you said that you told me the same thing before, that when you were younger, you didn't sit at home and practice hours, say like Steve Grossman did or something.
Like Winton did. Winton was a practicer, man. It was impressive.
Hmm.
It was great to watch. It's like I kind of really like me most times
Mm-hmm.
because when we moved to New York, and it never happened in New Orleans, but when we moved to New York, people say, "Man, aren't you like jealous of your brother?" And I'm like, "What?" It never occurred to me to be jealous. I mean, I was proud of him for practicing,
Huh.
but I knew that that was not anything that I was interested in.
Hmm.
And I was playing R&B. How much do you have to practice playing an R&B band? Not that much. You got to have a tone, you got to deliver, you got to have an attitude, you got to have a swag. I even like strong armed him into joining the R&B band, which he was really resistant, but he did it for 3 years. And by the second year, he was like, "This shit's great, man. When's the next gig?" I mean, he fell in love with it, and the guys in the band and everybody loved him. The other trumpet player, John Roche, my boy, he was like, I said, "Man, my brother, man, can we want my brother to audition for the band?" He goes, "Bruh," New Orleans, "Bruh. I mean, I know he's your brother, man, but can he play?" I'm like, "John, when you hear this shit," and he heard Winton play, he goes, "I can't even believe we play the same fucking instrument. What is that shit?" I mean, so it was a great thing because John was a natural for R&B. But Winton could play all this classical music and the jazz stuff he was working on, and I was glad he joined the band. We had a great time, but I was proud of him for doing that. But it wasn't anything that I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And he and my dad kind of talked me badgered me into starting to listen to jazz and play jazz. And I said, "All right, I'll give it a shot." And yeah, they won out. They won out. But it was never one of those situations where I was in a competition with my little bro.
Right.
You know, I got to shed because Winton shed. And I mean, I'm like, man, Winton's killing it. Not for me. And he would always, "Man, why don't you practice?" I said, "Man, get somebody else then. I'm having a great time
Right.
playing with you." And I was learning so much music that it just wasn't really that important for me to learn how to play the saxophone that well. And then sometime in my late 30s, I went, you know what? I need to learn how to play the saxophone. So I started working on it.
Hmm.
But I had this whole, 15-year like well of musical understanding. Like Wayne Short is not a great saxophone player. Man, it's killing though. It's killing.
I agree with you.
You know what I mean? So, it's like by the standards of Coltrane or Sonny Rollins, Wayne Shorter didn't play the saxophone that way. So what? Listen to what he's playing.
Right.
And that was one of those things where as I got older, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start. I'm never gonna practice in a way to learn all those 8th, 16th note patterns. I just don't even like the way that shit sounds. So it's not for me. But I wanted to have a better command of the saxophone.
You had a
But
lot of command when you were playing Yes or No, and around that period. What year was that? I don't remember now.
80s. Nah, not really. It was getting there, but I didn't really start. I didn't really start trying to focus on saxophone technique until like '96.
Hmm. That long.
Yeah, we were playing gigs though. I mean, you get things from playing gigs.
That's true. You do.
You get things from playing,
I
and
agree.
we were playing. And with that band, man, we were playing. Man, at least 250 nights a year. We were always on the road.
Oh man, that's a thing right there, man.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky. We were having a good time out there.
Yeah, the funny thing is, all of the older cast like Bill Crow, Frank West, Frank Foster, Plas Johnson, who I got to talk,
Right.
all of them said they didn't have these giant practice sessions, but they were playing all the time. They said we played
Yes.
all the time. I asked Lionel Hampton, "How'd you learn how to play?" He said, "Marshall, we got up in the morning, Benny rehearsed 4 hours, and then I played the vibes after, and then we played every single night." So they were immersed in the music, but most of the guys said I actually would learn a tune on the stage while someone else was playing it.
Right. Right. I
So,
mean, and that's why it always sounded so spontaneous, though.
hmm,
Because the problem with preparing is that the shit sounds prepared.
that's true.
So if you go to hear the same person 5 nights in a row, by the third night, you're like, wait a minute, that's the same solo from last night.
Right.
But with a guy like Gates, he was just up there winging, man. It was great. I love playing with him.
Yeah,
Even though they fired me, I love playing with him.
I wanted to get into that with you because I was in the band. I've been in the band still as a. Sometimes I'm on the gigs with your brother Jason, and we did
Yeah,
Birdland this year. And I
yeah, that's
wanted to
cool.
ask. I heard some about your legendary firing from the great Bill Titone.
It was a combination of things. I brought it on myself
Right.
because I'm a loudmouth, and I'm gonna speak up when I know I'm right. And the lead alto player, the band, I don't remember his name, but I listened to the records enough to know that they weren't phrasing
Huh.
the music right. And I was all of 22, maybe, yeah, 20, 21, something like that. And they needed a sax player. And one of the guys in the band remembered that my dad used to play tenor.
Huh.
And they called my dad to say, hey, can you come and sub in Hamp's band? And my dad said, man, I haven't played the tenor in 30 years, but my son's in town and he plays tenor. So I went down there, and Bill Titone, I think the thing was, it's like, he thought he was in New Orleans and we were just all a bunch of rubes. So I showed up. I used to wear overalls all the time. And I showed up with my overalls on. And he goes, you're the guy? I said, yeah. He says, well, can you read? Which is like, dude, I played an orchestra for 7 years. It's like, but I was like, can I read? Can you read? He says, well, can you read perfectly? This is the Lionel Hampton Orchestra. I said, who are you, man? He goes, I'm Bill Titone, the manager. I said, I tell you what, I won't spend any of my time talking to you about managing, and don't talk to me about music. So right at that point, he's like, that kid's got to go.
Right.
And then in the middle of the first rehearsal, I turned to the whole sax section and said, y'all aren't playing it right. It should sound like this. So then the whole sax section was like, this kid's got to go. He's 15 years younger than us. Who the hell does he think he is? And it's a fair point. But it really wasn't about me. It was more about, I want to play the music the right way. And I would just assume that everybody else would want to play the music the right way. I didn't think for a second that I was usurping their authority, because
Right.
I was not joining the band. It was a 2-week stint. And I think the guys, that the lead alto player was like, yeah, this kid's got to go. And Bill's like, great. I don't like him either. So Titone fired me. And I called Hamp, and I was just calling Hamp to say, what did I do wrong? That was all. It was like an exit interview. Right. And Hamp said, no, Gates, you should come back. You should come back. And I came back, and the curtains open, and Titone sees me, and he says, what are you doing in here? And he pulls the curtains out and says, get the hell off the stage. You're out. So I left. And he says, and I'll see to it, you better not ever move to New York, because I'll see that you never work in New York again. I was already in New York. I was living in New York, but I guess he just thought that, even though we don't have much hay in New Orleans, he thought we were just like, we would walk around with hay straw in our mouth and whatever it was. And I went, yeah, okay, bro. Yeah, cool. And then 2 years later, a year later, year and a half later, we're playing in Europe with Winton's band, and Ham's band's opening up for us.
Wow.
And I said, and Terrence was in the band, because Terrence was in that band too. He watched the whole thing. He goes, "Hey man, what's happening?" I said, uh, Terrence being Terrence Blanchard, for those in the audience that don't know, Terrence Blanchard, trumpet player, fantastic, and
Oh yeah.
scoring films now, film scorer, composer, great.
Right.
And he said, "Hey man, what's happening?" I said, "Man, where's Bill Titone's ass at?" You know, and he said, "Oh, he's over there." So I said, "Come here with me, man." And I walked over and said, "Hey, Mr. Titone, how you doing?" He goes, "Hey, kid, I see you doing good." I said, "Yeah, we doing all right. My brother's band is great. I just wanted to say hi." He said, "Well, good to see you." And I walked away. And he later turned and said, "As soon as you left," he says, "I can't stand that kid." So, I mean, had I been more emotionally mature, I really would have realized that. I really would have realized that my intention to make what I thought was a better decision for the music would come off as though I was trying to usurp the authority of the lead alto player.
Yeah.
I would have just kept my mouth closed and kept my head down. So I'm saying, you know, musically I was right, but when you look at it situationally, which very few 22-year-olds would do, you just say, "Man, I'm just here for a couple of weeks. I'm just gonna keep my head down."
Yeah,
So
makes
we did this session, and we did this like party or something. It was some weird. We were playing at this room in the Roosevelt Hotel. But then we did this extra gig, and Titone walks up and says, "I want to hear the kid play, Hamp. I want to hear him play." And they played a rhythm changes tune, which was great because that's what I had been shedding on, listening to Lester, play. Lester leaps in and just a bunch of rhythm changes. So I just started playing all this Lester stuff. And Gates is like, "Play another one, Gates. Play another one."
right.
Yep. "Gates, come on, Gates, play another one." And I played like 10 choruses, and the audience is clapping. And then it made it even worse. Titone was like, "The kid's got to go.
Kids got to go.
Kid's got to go." And I understand their points of view. I mean, I've really worked hard to not be a guy like that. I would rather have a conversation with someone than to say, "Oh, they're trying to usurp my authority and I have to fire them." So it was a good lesson. And I got to hear Gates play Midnight Sun for a week,
Mm,
which was like one of the great blessings
right. Especially
of
back.
humanity. And the baddest shit ever was that the drummer was Frankie Dunlop,
I remember that.
one of the most musical fucking drummers to ever play jazz in the history of jazz.
Right.
So I was basically hanging with Frankie and Curtis Fuller after the gig, just soaking in all of this information, talking to these cats.
Hmm.
Me and Curtis were playing pinball. After the gig, we found a pinball place and we would play for hours, but they were all talking about music. And Frankie, oh my God,
Hmm.
I didn't know such musicianship was even possible, where every solo he played was entirely based on the melody. I mean, my mind was blown. I was so used to hearing, power drumming and
Hmm.
muscle drumming. And he was just like, "Oh, good God." I mean, so I got a week of that, and then I came back to New York and I was talking to Tay and said, "Bro, you got to check out Frankie Dunlop." Because it wasn't like now where we got these devices and you can just type in Frankie Dunlop and songs come up. I mean, you had to go out and do searches for stuff.
Oh, that's funny you said that because I was telling somebody out there when back in my day, I had to maybe sell a few other records to go buy some other records at the used
Right.
record store. I couldn't get on something and hear the thing.
And some things weren't even in print. Like if you walk into a record store and say, "I'd like a Thelonious Monk record," they'd say, "Yeah, okay, we got two or three." If you
Right.
walk in and say, "I want to get a record with Frankie Dunlop on a Thelonious Monk record," the first thing they say is, "Well, who's Frankie Dunlop?"
Right.
So it's not like now you type it in, bam, Frankie comes up.
Right. That's
Frankie's
right.
name comes up. when he lived, when he died, which records he's on, and then you just go to one of the streaming services and get it, or you go to a music service and download the record. I mean, it's so much different now than it was back then. You had to do some
But
scrounging to find that stuff.
but that's the interesting thing about the people born around 59, 1960. Learning was a different process for me. My mother took me to the library, took out 10 books. I read them every week. When I practiced clarinet, I was sitting in a room by myself, with a book and with the music and what the teacher said to do. There was nothing to look up, no one to talk to. I don't want to hang out with nobody doing it. You know what I'm saying? That
Right,
learning was a process where your mind begins to develop. And now
right.
people want a shortcut, and the teacher's got to be happy and upbeat, teaching them lessons and stuff. And
Well, it's like the thing I understand is that I always use sports analogies.
uh,
Right. In the 1980s and the 1990s, Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player in the National Basketball Association. There were other great players, no doubt. Magic was there, James Worthy was there, Julius Irving was still playing towards the end of that. In the early 80s, Dr. J was still playing, Larry Bird was there. But from 1985 to 1998, year in, year out, Michael Jordan's teams were just there. And, Isaiah Thomas was there for a little while. It was all these people. And Michael Jordan is great because he was great. You get these ridiculous conversations. Well, what do you think it was? I mean, he's great because he was great. He didn't have no secret exercises that nobody else knew. He didn't have a secret practice regimen. He would finish the season and identify the thing he needed to work on, and he would go and work on it, and he would get it done. Other guys would probably go to the Bahamas, hang out, and do whatever, and say, "I'm gonna take this time off." He worked hard. He worked all the time, and he worked hard, and he was one of the best ever.
hmm.
I just think that a lot of these guys that you're talking about, it's not meant for them to be that thing, and they prove it in their behavior and their approach and all this other stuff when they're like, you know, live streaming their practice sessions and doing all this other shit. It's like they just like being on the scene. They just dig it and they want to be a part of something that's bigger than them, or maybe they're bigger than it, or whatever it is. So when I see those guys, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like they're just those dudes. We need them too.
I get that.
You know what I mean? I remember I moved to New York and I would just ask a question with guys. I was just like, just to know. It wasn't like you don't know people. So I said, man, why you play jazz? Why you play this shit? Some people would say, I love the music. I heard this cat. I heard this cat. And then some people literally said to me, well, you know what, man? Anything's better than doing a 9 to 5. Those guys are just losers. And then some people would say, man, it's just a cool thing. People recognize you and you get in the clubs for free. I mean, it was like, really? That's why you play this shit? Okay, great. But I mean, you hear all these answers. And it's like, okay, yeah, your motivation is a lot different than mine. Okay, cool.
That is interesting. I around my household for some reason, after my father went off, he was in World War II, and
Mm,
he was in the Pacific all of 1945, and he actually took pictures. I got a bunch of pictures. I got to publish them one day. He was in Japan all of 1945. Actually, interesting enough that I'm here, by the way, still in Japan.
right.
I've only been able to get back to the United States once this year. It's just like forbidden, man. And
I know. Hey,
I thought I was
just
going to
hang
get.
out, man.
I was there in September, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get back for Christmas. Things are looking up. Wow, man! But holy God, bro, I'm embarrassed, brother. I'm embarrassed.
Hey, they're approving the vaccine tomorrow or tonight or something.
Right,
So maybe by next week the vaccines will start.
right. But at any rate, I my dad didn't really listen. My mom loved jazz, but he kind of, I don't know why, something must have happened to him in life. Who knows? He went to a war. You know what I'm saying? He did not listen to jazz anymore. He listened to classical music all the time, and it
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't in the house, right? But I found he had. You remember 8-track tapes? I know a lot of people have no idea what I'm talking about. We had eight
Wow.
track. he had put the 8-track tape in his car, right? Because he always liked music 24 hours a day. So I found a Louis Armstrong tape, Hello Dolly, right?
Right.
Somehow it was in his collection.
Right.
And I played that in 8th grade, and I just fell in love with it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
I was like, this is the thing for me. And my mom was so
Right.
excited. She's like, oh, you like, and she got me a couple other little things to listen to. And then I found some David Sanborn, and like I was listening to Chicago, all that kind of
Right.
stuff,
Right.
David Sanborn. I was like, I was just trying to stand like Sanborn. I didn't know he had polio.
Man,
I'm trying
there's
you
a
know,
record. There's a couple of records that he did in the '70s. Probably gonna say the I think it's called Straight to the Heart.
yeah, that's the first
Man, yeah, I played that shit every day, man, for years. I would listen to that right. I was just like the greatest thing ever. I was just like, I was like, man, this cat. Like when I met Kenny Kirkland, I was at Berkeley, and uh, there was this singer at Berkeley, Mary Wormworth was her name. She went to that music and art school, they call it LaGuardia now, LaGuardia School of the Arts in Manhattan. And she loved New York the same way New Orleans people love New Orleans. She's like,
one.
oh, New York's the bomb, New York. I know all these people. And I'm like, you always name dropping. You don't know nobody. You don't know shit. Stop. So Kenny Kirkland was coming to town. He was playing with Angela Bofield. And we were saying, oh, man, we got to find a way to meet Kenny Kirkland. And then Mary starts saying, I know Kenny. I said, you don't know nobody. You always saying you know people. She goes, I know Kenny. So how the hell you know Kenny? He's older than you. He says, he dates my sister. Can you call him? It's like, yeah, I can get his number. I can call him. I'll find out where he's staying. Because it's not like, no such thing as cell phones in 1979, So called him at his hotel and we said, hey, man, can you come by Berkeley? He said, sure, bro. He walked over to Berkeley. We all met him and he was like, we were just talking shit. He said,
Wow.
man, yo, man, here's my number. If you guys come to Manhattan, let's have a jam session. So the word got around, hey, man, let's take the train. Because back then you could take the train from Boston to New York for $35 with a student ID. And say, hey, man, let's go have a jam session. We called Kenny. Hey, man, we're going to come in on this day. He said, yeah, cool. Now, I didn't realize that Kenny had this reputation. They called him the Phantom because he would say yes, and then he would not be home or not show up. We didn't know that. So me and Donald Harrison, Smitty Smith came, a bunch of people. I think Lenora Helm, Victor Bailey came. There was so many people that came, and we took the train and came to Kenny's house and went up there and had a jam session. And at some point they called Giant Steps. And when I played it, at the end of it, he laughed. He goes, damn, bro, I never heard a dude play Giant Steps and sound like David Sanborn at the same time. Oh my God. That was my dude, man. I was Sanborn out. And my boy Walter Beasley, he was Grovered out, so we would always talk about, man, why are you listening to Sanborn? I'm like, man, Sanborn's the shit. You can have that Grover shit. And then
I'm
but they were both killing, but it was just great. And it was just we had a great time, but that's how I met Kenny. Thanks to Mary.
Wow, wow. That was a great time. And actually, Straight to the Heart was later. The Taken Off was the first one that Howard Johnson
Okay.
produced.
Yeah,
Howard
that's not
Johnson
the one I knew.
at Howard
Straight to
Johnson. The first one I had was the one called Sanborn. You remember a big
Mhm.
picture on the cover with Morning Salsa, and then I learned all that stuff off the record, man. I didn't know what was going on, but I just man.
I want to look it up. I'm pretty sure it's Straight to the Heart. It's like 75.
Yeah, no, Straight to the Heart came out just a couple years later. I definitely know it.
But
I
then
like
he had another record called something similar to that.
there was a record with Promise Me the Moon and
Yeah,
stuff.
okay. Straight to the Heart is 84.
84, that's later. But I'm
So
back.
that's not the one I'm talking about. There's another one, 75, and it has a similar name. It has heart in it. Let's see. A change. No, not that. Let's go early, people. 87. They
I
s- they
had
started 1980
oh
and
no,
in
he had
70. I'm looking at all these records.
the first one was Taken Off
Yeah,
19.
not that one.
Then the next one came out was called Sanborn with a big picture of his face on the cover.
Not that one.
Then there was another one with Promising Me the Moon. I had them all at one time, man. I was, you know,
Yeah, well, there's a record. I mean, because when I did my recital at Berkeley, we played one of the songs from that record.
oh, get out of here.
Hell yeah, man! My recital was quite diverse.
There was a Victor Lewis tune on one of them. You remember that? Seventh Avenue.
Heart to Heart.
Heart to
That's the
Heart.
name of the record.
There it
Heart
is.
to Heart.
I had that
1976.
right.
That's the record.
That's
I knew there was another Heart record in there. Yeah, I mean, I wore that record out.
right.
I wore that shit out, boy.
But you know, Dave's singing when he plays, man. He's telling
Hell
us
yeah, man.
that's what's missing to me from a lot of folks, man.
Well, I mean, when you listen to like jazz in a certain kind of aggregate way, I mean, those are like like the special dudes. There were a lot of guys that did, Coleman Hawkins, 1927. Was he the only saxophone player in 1927? No,
Mhm.
but he was that dude.
Right. That's
You know what
right.
I mean? And then Lester Young showed up, and he was that dude. There were other players that were really good.
I think what I enjoy about people's playing is that, like you said, Charlie Parker was the melodic. And when you listen to those Dean Benedetti tapes, Charlie could go half step up, half step down. He'd move the time around.
Right,
I could hear Eric Dolphy, Ornette, it Train. When
yeah,
Charlie was stretched live, man, sometimes he would just his aural ability. I spoke to Bill Crow about that. We did an interview with Bill Crow, and
right,
Bill had met Charlie Parker. He told a story of hanging in an apartment where everyone used to hang with Charlie Parker. And Charlie never liked to listen to jazz when he came over. He said Charlie wanted to hear classical music. Did you have some different classical music he hadn't heard? So
hmm
Charlie found some kind of book, some kind of etude book or something. I don't remember, violin studies or something. And while they're listening, he said Charlie was, just looking at the book. So,
right,
and Bill said every night I would go down because you could go down to the club and then listen to Charlie Parker or something like 6 hours into.
right,
Um, what he found fascinating was he said Charlie started to play during his solo things he had read from this music book. And he
right,
was trying to find ways to insert them in his solos. So he was
right.
just discussing with me that Charlie's aural abilities, his ability to translate music into the aural thing was.
Well, that was his strength. I mean, I got into a thing with Joey Calderazzo.
Mhm.
We were listening to Bird on this long trip, and he was saying, do you think like Bird knew changes? I mean, I said, yeah, but not the way you're thinking about it. I mean, he could just hear. He didn't sit around like if you walked up to him because there was a thing where Red Rodney did an interview saying Charlie Parker didn't know harmony. And he said, I would ask him what the changes were, and he would tell me cryptic jokes. And he says, and the reason is because he didn't know. And my argument is kind of simple. Well, if you can hear it, doesn't that mean you know it? If you can hear what the form is, do you need to know, like, to be able to directly say, you know, 251 or this or that or the other or whatever it is, flat five substitution, blah, blah, blah. Do you really need to say that shit if you know what it is? And then it's like, well, if you don't know it, how can you do it? And I would say that, because they would just say, oh, well, Charlie Parker was like an intuitive genius. I said, no, not really. He was just a genius. Well, there was all these things he didn't know. I'm like, well, what do you mean? I mean, if you, how do you, tell me the thing that you can do that you don't know how to do? Whatever it is. Do you know how to walk? Can you scientifically tell me how you walk? Because basically on the parameters that you're saying, said if you can't tell me, which nerves communicate to the brain to tell the leg to do such and such, then you don't even fucking know how to walk. Yet you're walking. Charlie Parker could hear. He didn't need to know this shit.
But
And Joey's like, I
I
don't think that's
I,
true.
I get the
Hmm?
I get the feeling he he knew the chord changes, but also
I
being.
don't think he knew any of that shit.
You don't think so?
I think Dizzy knew it. Dizzy was the harmony guy.
Mm-hmm.
So then we got to North Sea a month later, and Joey never forgets anything. And Lou Donaldson was sitting on the bench. I said, "Sweet Lou, hey baby, what's happening? We talking." Joey walks up and says, "Hey Lou, I'm Joey Calderazzo. I'm in Branford's band." He says, "It's nice to meet you." He says, "Do you think Charlie Parker knew harmony?" So Lou was like, "The fuck kind of question is that? You know, what do you mean?" He goes, "No, no, I mean like." If the gig is over and I say, "Hey man, what were the changes on that song?" Would he say like, A to D? He says, "No, hell no, you could hear. He didn't do that."
Oh, I see.
I mean, I know a lot of musicians who don't play well who know harmony.
That's
A lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. But if you can hear it, I mean, did James Brown know harmony? I don't think so. Does it matter really?
hmm,
And this is kind of where we get caught in all of this shit. I mean, it's about creating sound. It's not about knowing shit. It's like playing playing classical music. It's not enough that the notes are correct. You have to create a sound with those sequences that affects people emotionally.
that's true.
Period. So, Pavarotti was a great singer and nobody knew what to say because people are musically illiterate. So they always talked about the fact that he could hit a high C. And he was the only singer that could hit a high C at that time, the only tenor that
Right.
could hit it with consistency. There was a hell of a lot more to his skill than the ability to hit a high C.
Right.
But it was possible for lay people to articulate what that was. And he never learned any other language because a lot of great opera singers speak, German and Russian, and he only sang in Italian, and he didn't read a note.
Hmm. Hmm.
Didn't read a fucking note.
Right.
There's probably 100 opera singers from Italy who could read everything. Guess what? They're not. They're not Pavarotti.
That's true. You're right. You're right about that.
There might even be more than 100, but I
Right.
doubt it. I mean, 100 sounds like that's a lot for opera singers.
Right.
So we place this premium, and and I can read, and I know harmony relatively decent. I mean,
Hmm.
but that just ain't the thing for me. It ain't the thing. The thing is the thing that moves people. And if you don't have that thing, it don't matter how much you know. If you can't hear, if you can't, if you're in the football, in the American football business, and you look on the field and you really can't see what's going on, then you make up for that by knowing things.
Right. That's right.
6'5", runs the 40 in 4.3 seconds, vertical leap of 44 inches. Can they play football? Well, they're really great athletes. Can they play football? Yeah, I think they can play football. They're great athletes. And that's how the Chicago Bears draft Mitchell Trubisky and pass up on Pat Mahomes. That's how you do that.
Right.
Because you can't fucking tell who's a really good football player. So you go with stats. It's the same kind of thing. And then the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs said, that guy is a football player. We need to trade up, do whatever we can to get him because he's going to change our future.
Right. If, speaking of that, how about my boys, the Steelers, this year? I know it's a weird year, man, with COVID and everything, man. But
Don't worry. They just lost to the Washington football team.
yeah, I watched it. I got over here. I got Sling TV and Netflix, all
Yeah.
and stuff. You know.
I mean, I'm it was great. I mean, well, Tane's a big Steelers fan. I'm happy for the Steelers. I'm from New Orleans. I'm a Saints fan. It's going to
Steelers,
work out.
Steelers got no running game, though. That's a problem, man. No.
That's the problem. That is a problem. The defense is incredible, but I mean, it was fun watching a team like Washington really fight and scrap. It was great for Alex Smith, who had a leg injury 2 years ago where they thought he was going to have to be amputated.
Right.
So that part was great. I mean, it's a nice feel good story. They're not the Steelers. The Steelers, there's two really dominant teams in the AFC,
Right.
and it's Kansas City and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you can't be born in Pittsburgh and not be into the Steelers, man. You know what I'm saying, man.
Bro, I'm from New Orleans. I know the same story. It's the same story.
But man, I knew something was wrong when we're on third down, 1 yard to go, and rather than run the ball, he throws the ball again.
Yeah.
And I said, "Come on, man!" I grew up in the day with Franco Harris, Rocky Black. Come on, man.
Well, Connor's good. He keeps getting hurt though.
Yeah.
He keeps getting hurt, and what Pittsburgh in the last 10 years has really done is really been able to find wide receivers who no one knows from small colleges.
That's true. You're right.
And Antonio Brown was one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Plaxico Burress was kind of known because he went to Michigan State.
Oh yeah.
And there's the other guy. I'm trying to remember his name.
I know you.
Santonio Home. Well, he went to Miami. That's true. But not that kid. That kid that's there now, Claypool.
Yeah.
Woo. They find a way. Hey man, it's 9:30. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, man. I didn't even get to ask you about the Tonight Show, so maybe we'll have to do another one if you have some time, man.
Well, the COVID's going on. I don't see us really hitting the road again till the fall if we're lucky. So I'm around.
All right, man. I enjoy listening to you, man.
We can do a part two, bro. We can do a part two.
That's the first time I ever heard the whole Lionel Hampton story. That's funny, man. I was going to say, maybe it's a Virgo thing. You and me are both Virgos. I've done some stuff like that, man. It just pissed everybody off when I was younger, man.
I don't mind pissing people off, man, but it was a time for it. I mean, if it was my band, I don't care who I piss off, but
right.
I was this kid in a band full of men.
Right.
And I should have just kept my damn mouth shut. But no regrets.
No
regrets.
Is it true at the end of the movie? Someone told me at the end of one of that Spike Lee movie, you yelled something out about Titone. Is that a true story? Is that
no, hell no.
All right,
that man wasn't even. That man was not on my mind past the last time I met him.
All right.
I ain't mad at him. I wasn't mad at him. He was more mad at me. He just,
A lot of folks got mad at him. Patrick Rickman once, Patrick Rickman, Face, trumpet player. He kind of got. He was playing with Bernard Harper for a long time. He kind of got out the music, man. But right. One time he got up in Titone's face because I don't know what they were doing in Europe. He's kind of. Patrick once pulled a razor on me. He's one of those cats from Kansas City. You know what I'm saying? He's like, yo, man, you need to stop whatever you're doing. You need to stop.
Right.
I forgot who I was talking to. I'm sorry, Mr. Rickman.
Right.
One time he got up in Titone's face about like an inch away, right? Why you want to do that, Bill? You don't want to do that, Bill. And Bill was turning whiter and whiter, right?
Oh, yeah. Titone wasn't ready for that kind of action, man. He's a clown.
Yeah, he would just piss people off, to tell you the truth. Another cat, this little dude, man, a short dude. He said something to him the wrong way. This little dude got up, man. I'm about to knock you down, bro. You need to step back.
Bill really wanted to be something that he wasn't.
Right.
He wanted to be a mover and shaker in the music business, and he was just Ham's manager. That's all.
Just so the folks know, I was in Lionel Hampton's band while still going on, and then we'll end it right here. Before Lionel Hampton passed away, he did fire Bill Titone when Bill tried to take all his money when he was in the hospital. So, but he came around.
Yeah, but Bill was a hack all along.
And then Bill Berjak took over the band, and we had a few years. And Hamp, as he got older, kind of came a little more friendlier to people as he realized his time was short. And
I like Bill. The great thing for me was I said, I won't have any people in my camp like that guy.
Right.
Because my thing is that, a manager is supposed to manage your career. How the hell can you manage my career if you're on a road with me?
Right.
Shouldn't you be at home answering the phone and trying to make things happen instead of going on free vacations and trips? And
I remember.
Shouldn't even be out here.
Tony Barrero said once, he said, have you noticed Bill Titone wears Rolex and Lionel Hampton wears Timex?
Timex, that's right. I'm shit. Well, it was clear to me what it was, but at least I had enough respect for my elders to it's like, man, that's Hamp's business.
That's true.
You know what I mean? If he wants to be with a joker like him, that's yeah. Because then the best part is that he sacked me because then they played in D.C. and his brother lived in D.C. and his brother played tenor, so
Hmm.
his brother came into the band, and
Wow.
I'm like, my whole thing is that shit, that's on Hamp.
All right. But,
You know what I mean?
those are good stories and good times. I really enjoyed playing with Lionel Hampton to death, man. And
I loved it, man. I loved it.
it
Hamp
was,
was a mug.
man, it was swinging like crazy, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed. It's great.
All right, brother. On that positive note, I
My
hope.
man, talk to you soon. It's great. It's a pleasure.
Hey, be safe.
お疲れ様でした。
よろしくお願いします。長々とございます。